Belle Starr was known as an infamous outlaw in the Wild West, the western edge of the expanding United States in the second half of the 1800s. She associated with famous outlaws like Frank and Jesse James and was arrested several times. Starr was killed in 1889, with her murderer having never been brought to justice. Please consider subscribing and checking the description for cool links. Belle was born Myra Belle Shirley in a log cabin near Carthage, Missouri on February 5, 1848, to John Shirley and his third wife, Elizabeth. As a young girl, Belle lived a privileged life, attending the Carthage Female Academy, where in addition to the basic classes, she was taught music and classical languages. She was a bright student with polite manners and a talent for playing the piano. She also loved the outdoors, where she spent many a day roaming the countryside with her older brother, Bud, who taught her how to ride a horse and handle a gun. Unfortunately, her life changed dramatically when the Kansas-Missouri border war broke out, forcing residents to take sides and making neighbors into bitter enemies. Irregular bands of jayhawkers and redlegs laid waste to Missouri communities in support of the Union. And soon, brother Bud joined Quantrill's raiders. Bud knew the area and served admirably as a scout, quickly attaining a captain's rank. However, in June 1864, Bud was tragically killed in Sarcassi, Missouri. The devastated family sold their properties and moved to a small town southeast of Dallas called Syene. Two years later, in 1866, the James Younger gang robbed their first bank in Liberty, Missouri, and fled with $6,000 in cash and bonds. The group fled to Texas, and several of the outlaws sought refuge with the Shirley family. Belle later said that it was there that she became reacquainted with old family friend Jim Reed, the first man she ever loved. The romance blossomed in Texas, and they married on November 1st, 1866. Belle was just a few months past the age of 18. Reed moved in with the Shirley family, but a year later, by late 1867, he and Belle moved to the Reed homestead in Missouri. Early in September 1868, Belle gave birth to their first child, Rosie Lee. She adored the baby and referred to her as Pearl. When Jim and Belle moved to Missouri, Reed was a wanted man, and the two fled to California with their young daughter Pearl, and before long, a second child came along, whom they named Edward. In 1869, Reed and two other outlaws rode to the North Canadian River country, where they tortured an Old Creek Indian until he told them where he had hidden $30,000 in gold. With their share of the loot, Jim and Belle returned to Texas, where she played the role of Bandit Queen to the hilt. But it wasn't long before the outlaw life caught up with Reed, and in August 1874, he was killed in a gunfight by a member of his own gang. Belle left her children with her mother, and she rode the outlaw trail in Indian Territory. what is now Oklahoma, and she got involved with a flat-faced Indian outlaw who went by the name of Blue Duck. Their affair was short-lived, and his place was soon taken by Sam Starr, a tall, slim Cherokee. They married, and the honeymooners settled down on Sam's 62 acres on the north side of the Canadian River, near Briartown, Oklahoma. She named their new homestead Younger's Bend. The outlaw couple formed a gang, and from their hideaway on the Canadian River, entered into a life of wrestling, horse stealing, and bootlegging whiskey. The brains behind these operations, carefully planning each move, was the woman now known as Belle Starr. Sam and Belle found the bandit life very lucrative, and she would use the money liberally to bribe the freedom of any gang members who were captured. The nearest settlement to the Starr Gang's operation was Fort Smith, Arkansas. The local magistrate there was the famed Judge Isaac Parker, also known as the Hanging Judge. Parker became determined to put Belle Starr behind bars, and several times his deputies had brought Belle in to face various charges, like rustling or bootlegging, yet each time she was set free due to lack of evidence. In the fall of 1882, however, Parker got lucky when Belle was caught red-handed as she attempted to steal a neighbor's horse. After a trial, he sentenced Belle to 2 consecutive 6-month prison terms, and Sam to 1 year in the federal prison in Detroit. After serving their time, Belle and Sam returned to Younger's Bend. The couple returned to their old ways and began rustling and bootlegging again, and in 1886 were arrested by U.S. Marshals and tried by Judge Parker for robbery and horse stealing. But the charges were dropped due to lack of evidence. By this time, Belle was somewhat of a celebrity, portrayed as a Western folk hero by dime novels. She was dubbed the Bandit Queen. After she left prison, Belle briefly worked in a Wild West show, playing the part of an outlaw who held up a stagecoach. As fate would have it, Sam Starr got into a gunfight with an old nemesis named Frank West. Both men hit their marks and died of their wounds at a friend's Christmas party on December 17, 1886. Belle's life as an outlaw queen, and what had been the happiest relationship of her life, abruptly ended with her husband's death. It wasn't long after her husband's death that Belle remarried Jim July Starr, a relative of Sam Starr, in order to keep her residence on Indian land. The marriage was reported to be troubled. Her troubles culminated on February 3, 1889, 2 days before her 41st birthday, when she was killed. Multiple accounts of her death exist, but all seem to indicate that as she was riding home on her horse, she was ambushed from behind. She received several shotgun wounds to the back and neck, and when she fell off her horse, was shot execution style. She was buried in the front yard of her cabin at Younger's Bend. Months later, her daughter Pearl hired a stonecutter to mount a monument over the grave. On top of the stone was carved an image of her favorite mare, Venus. Thanks for watching and supporting the channel. Be sure to click that subscribe button and also check the description for some other great videos.